One of the things I promised that I'd do this year is to both treat myself and really take time in what I choose to add to my closet.
As you know, I'm preparing for a wedding and that's super expensive, but just because that's happening in my life doesn't mean that I want to lower the quality of the things that I buy for myself during the regular year.
Quince is my go-to for luxury essentials at affordable prices. Quince offers a range of high-quality items at prices within reach, like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50 and washable silk tops and dresses.
The best part about Quince is that all those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands, which is exactly what I'm looking for.
That's because Quince only works with factories that uses safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. By working directly with the factories, Quince is able to cut out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. One of my favorite things I got from Quince is my boyfriend cardigan, which I have not been able to take off.
Their washable silk blouses has really elevated my work wardrobe and makes cleanup super duper easy because I hate dry cleaning.
Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns.
That's QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/booktalk. When it comes to groceries, I'm always overambitious and think I'm going to be awesome and cook regularly throughout the week. That is not the case.
Hungry Root is perfect because it's your own personal shopper, so they take care of your weekly grocery shopping, recommending healthy groceries tailored to your taste, nutrition preferences, health goals, which makes cooking so much easier for you, Amy.
When I shop for my Hungry Root box every week, I look at my schedule and determine how much I'm willing to cook and how much I need pre-prepared, and always make sure to check the time those recipes take to make.
I love Hungry Root so much because they make it easy to eat high-quality, nutritious food and achieve any diet or health goals, from anti-inflammatory to gut-friendly, gluten-free, or dairy-free, high-protein, and more.
What I love is the automation of this. You can tell Hungry Root what your preferences are, and they fill your cart, and you can make substitutions as you go, and it learns with every box that you fill.
You're going to love Hungry Root as much as we do. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life.
Go to hungryroot.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, and use the code BOOKTALK. That's hungryroot.com/booktalk. And use the code BOOKTALK to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life.
hungryroot.com/booktalk. Code BOOKTALK, BOOKTALK.
This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
Consumed with Elena's ominous warning, Selena continues to search for information about word marks and to reveal the meaning behind those that surrounded the ebony clock tower. While with Nehemia, Selena is confronted by Cain and Varen. Cain reveals he knows her true identity as Adderlin's assassin. Deep in research at the library, Selena is desperate to find anything about word marks, but instead stumbles upon an old mysterious text from her destroyed homeland, only adding to her growing concern about the mysterious evil foe she must face. While training, she and Kale are met with news about another champion's brutal death. Selena joins Kale to examine the body, and a chilling realization dawns on her. Maybe the one murdering the champions is the same as Elena's mysterious evil foe. After an animated conversation with Dorian, Selena struggles to block out the memories of her past and is visited by Elena once more, who warns her about the next trial.
Hey there, we're Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy, your book besties who take the novels you love seriously.
We embrace and respect modern fantasy, romance, and romantasy books written by women, and so it is in our nature to analyze these books as we would any other novel we might have dissected in school.
With our combined 13 years of literary academic training, we use our education to analyze and give voice to reasons you may love or hate today's popular books.
This is part 1 of this week's episode, where we're discussing chapters 27 through 31 of Sarah J. Maas's debut novel, Throne of Glass. For a complete list of episodes and chapter breakdowns, be sure to check out our Instagram at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk.
Before we dive in, let's talk about Spilled. Spoilers, perspective and interpretation, language, and themes.
Spoilers. While our discussion is about Throne of Glass, important context from the first 3 novels in the series will be discussed without spoiler warning. That is specifically Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnights, and Heir of Fire. This is not a read-along for anyone who hasn't read at least these 3 books, and you will be spoiled from here on out. So please take this as your only spoiler warning. For all other spoilers beyond Heir of Fire and other SJM works, we will keep those to the breadcrumbs and broomstick sections at the end of the episode.
Perspective and interpretation. What we discuss in this episode are strictly our personal interpretation of the text. We do not speak for Sarah J. Maas and in no way know her intentions for her books or characters. We also know our listeners have their own personal views and opinions, and we encourage you to share your thoughts with us because every perspective and interpretation is worth exploring.
Language. Even though I try to keep my swearing to the minimum for the sake of my mother, I'm sorry, Mom, explicit language does occur. Looking at you, fucking Amy.
Themes. We also discuss some heavy subjects throughout the podcast that can include themes of sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death. While we will do our best to give trigger warnings for the darker themes, we will discuss these topics when they are important to the text. Listener discretion is advised.
As always, we love keeping the conversation going because our listeners are so good at finding things we've overlooked or missed completely. You can share your interpretation of the text with us by posting on social media, tagging us in stories, sending us DMs, and submitting to the form on our website. We also post more exclusive content and host live streams for our Patreon supporters. You can find us at patreon.com/Book Talk for Book Talk. And each week we ask ourselves a question. And this week we ask, is Celaena able to decipher her own emotions and feelings towards Chaol and Dorian? And to what extent do the threats surround her muddy the water?
Themes we see in this section include anxiety, avoidance, and possession.
Chapter 27 starts with Celaena observing the clock tower. Quote, Celaena stared at the ebony clock tower. It grew darker and darker, as if somehow absorbed by the sun's dying rays. On top of it, the gargoyles remained stationary. They hadn't moved, not even a finger. What I like about this is the simplicity of the description. SJM is not hiding anything from us. She's like, clock tower, evil. And that is in fact evil. So, it's direct. It's not bad. It's actually kind of refreshing because I feel like a lot of times, whether it's her or other books, they're kind of like, you can't really tell it's actually evil. But now it's like, behold, monsters. I don't know what to give you guys. You are.
It's black. It's absorbing light. There are gargoyles.
Yeah.
It also feels like a breadcrumb in general, not just about the evil nature, but a little bit more than that. However, I will leave that breadcrumb for the end of the episode.
Just like how the king likes to hoard money in the kingdom, like you think about the castle and the fact that it's super gaudy and expensive, the king has also been hoarding magic. Quote, there were 12 of them all together, forming a large circle around the solitary tower. Remember, he's forbidden magic, and this is clearly magic. Now, at this point, I don't think Celaena's made that connection, but we know. We also start to get this understanding with Celaena and her relationship with nature, which makes sense because right now she's really uneasy with the clock tower and with it being evil. So of course she herself is going to feel uneasy, and we're going to see that, like I said, in nature. Quote, she savored the heat from her cloak, remembering all too well the winter she'd spent in Endovier. Winter was unforgiving when you lived in the shadow of the Rune Mountains. It was a miracle she hadn't gotten frostbite. If she went back, another winter might kill her. And this is her being super aware. Like, if she does not win, if she does not make it out of this, she will go back to the slave mines and she will not live. And this is a PTSD moment. And we just have to keep in mind that I feel like this is a sign with how she views cold and winter, Also, give a spoiler warning before your next.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything spoilery. I'm just going to say Rune Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I also think there's a chance SJM forgot that she named it Rune Mountains.
Maybe
also
we should say that in the at the breadcrumb section.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Remember this.
We also learn through this kind of inner reflection on Celaena's part that the final trial coincides with Yulmus, aka winter solstice, Yule, the longest night of the year. That feels like, to me, the perfect time for evil to strike. So it should be ominous to us as readers when she's so disgruntled and traumatized by winter. Winter, darkest night of the year. It all feels connected.
I love winter. Give me snow, give me night. I'm already mad that it's 70 degrees outside today.
Nehemia has never seen snow and is cognizant of its novelty, but also that novelty may fade away. Quote, "I've never seen snow," Nehemia said, looking at the sky. "I wonder how long the novelty will last." Selena says, "Hopefully long enough for you to not mind the drafty corridors, freezing mornings, and days without sunshine." This is a reminder to, I think, Selena, or us at least as readers, that the grass isn't always greener. I feel like this is somehow a reflection of Selena's life. You know, she's a firm believer in the fact that fate and destiny has abandoned her, but that's not necessarily true. And the grass isn't necessarily greener, even if it has abandoned you. No matter your identity, fate's going to come for you. You may believe that it's not, but it is. And your fate is your fate.
Wheel of Fortune Tutana or something like that. The Wheel of Fortune goes around in circle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Life is a cycle.
Life is a cycle. You're on top, you're on bottom. You're on top, you're on bottom.
Yep. I do want to point out that whenever Selena dives inward because of a memory, she tries to distract herself and those around her with things that make those individuals around her focus on themselves. And we see this happen in this instant. Quote, "Selena had already spent one blistering summer in the heat of the Red Desert, but to tell Nehemia that would only invite difficult questions. Instead, she said, quote, 'I'd like to see Eelway very much.' Nehemia's gaze lingered on Selena's brow for a moment before she grinned. 'Then it shall be so.'"
So at this point, we don't really know anything. We don't know her background, and we're not going to talk about her background. But clearly what we do know is that she's been there before. And as a first-time reader, you might be like, why can't she say anything? What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm personally with Nehemia. Cold is my jam, but Selena is not a fan, understandably. And it can't snow without clouds. So my science fact of the day. Quote, "Watching the shifting colors of the fading sun turn the castle gold and red and blue." Now, remember what we said before, that midnight and darkness is actually what brings out, that moonlight and darkness is actually what brings out the truth. And the stars count. And even though clouds hide moon and stars, I'm going to just say that, hiding the sunlight is what will bring the truth. And I think you can see the evidence of that there. In the daylight, the castle is gold. But as it gets darker, it's starting to look, what is that color? Red, which is what we've been continuously talking about as being linked to evil and bad in this book. So it's starting to show its true colors.
So I want to continue that quote. After Selena sees the shifting colors in the glass of the castle, she then thinks, quote, "Despite the ostentatious nature of the glass castle, she had to admit that it did look rather beautiful at times." So with that thought in mind, I want to look at the colors again. Gold and red. Those are the colors of Adarlan, the kingdom, Dorian and his father's kingdom, and blue, the color of Dorian's eyes. I point this out because Selena did not like the idea of this glass castle when she first came to Rifthold. But now we see her being charmed by superficial details of how the sun and the sunset plays off the reflection of this glass castle. It's not lost on me that after this point, she admits to herself that she likes Dorian. She's being charmed. She's being fooled. She's being hypnotized and lulled kind of into a sense of complacency. She can't remember right now how much she hated the glass castle. She can't remember how much she wanted nothing to do with it. So I point that out.
I love it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I point that out for another argument I'm going to make later on in the episode.
I'm excited.
When Selena mentions Xavier's body and seeing it after he was murdered, Nehemia presses for more information. Quote, "You saw the body? My guards weren't allowed close enough." Selena nodded slowly. "I'm sure you don't want to know the details." "Indulge me," Nehemia pressed, smiling tightly. I think this moment is a little odd, and that's because I feel like By trying to withhold information from Nehemia, Celaena is treating Nehemia like a child, like someone who can't handle the idea of death and gory details. And quite frankly, that's just like how Dorian, Chaol, men in general treat Celaena, as if she's fragile. And you can kind of tell by Nehemia's reaction, she's not amused at all. I'm going to put a pin in that, but circle back to it before the end of this scene.
I love that. You can tell that Celaena categorizes herself as more on the masculine side rather than, princess feminine.
Yeah.
Even though Nehemia, as we'll discover, is not your typical princess.
Exactly.
Celaena is then compared to a dog, and of course it's going to be by Cain. Quote, "Lots of barking from the prince's lapdog," Cain said, "but does she have any fangs?" And, that's the comparison to a dog. And I think that it's going to be I want to put that there because unknowingly later on, I feel like there's going to be a comparison to her and Dorian's new litter of pups.
That's exactly right. It's going to come up. And we, as Jac and Amy, have already made that comparison to Celaena and Dorian's hound. But Celaena herself earlier in the novel also compared herself to being the king's lapdog. So this is not the first time that this has happened on Celaena's
We both edited
part.
episode 1. I think that was episode 1. We could almost like, oh my God, I forgot that happened. Celaena, I think though, like you were saying, she's the one who's compared herself to the lapdog. So she leans into this comparison. Quote, "You'll find out when your fangs are buried in your neck." She embraces that animal side, which is just like, in my mind, just a hop, skip, and a jump away from her embracing her face side.
Yep, completely agree. It's also here that we learn Cain knows Celaena is not Lillian, but in fact, Aderlin's assassin. Now, this is dangerous for Celaena. The Celaena from Chapter 7 may have wanted to be known and seen for who she is. She is Aderlin's assassin, the greatest, most notorious assassin. And she has wanted everyone to know she's been holding back. But when this revelation is made, Celaena is actually afraid. And I think that's because she's been convinced that hiding her identity is the best way for her to win. So now that she's recognized, it risks everything she might lose, aka her freedom. And potentially because it might disappoint Chaol. Celaena also in this moment hopes that Nehemia doesn't understand enough of the language that they're speaking to know what Cain is saying and what's going on. Now, I want to go back to the point I just made earlier about how Celaena kind of handles Nehemia with kid gloves. Celaena is either assuming Nehemia can't handle information or that Nehemia doesn't have information, which, if you believe information is power, and Celaena doesn't want Nehemia to have that information, Celaena is withholding power from Nehemia. And ultimately, to me, it comes across sometimes as Celaena assuming she is better than Nehemia.
Yeah, I agree.
It might be unintentional, but it is there. In a place where she can't dominate a lot of people, she has to hide herself. It's nice that she gets to dominate over the only other female in the group.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like of course she's going to classify herself as other. She's been classifying herself as other. She's the only one who knows what it feels like to be a slave. She's the only one who knows what it feels like to be an assassin. So she has this idea of no one could get it.
Mm-hmm.
During the confrontation between Cain and Varen, Nehemia pulls Celaena away and shows support to her. Quote, "Celaena squeezed her hand back. It had been a while since someone had looked out for her, and Celaena had the feeling she could get used to it." And I do love women supporting women, like even though we're talking about Celaena having power and, thinking that she might be better than Nehemia in an unknowing sense. But it's just kind of like, yes, finally, women can support each other.
Yeah, I think, despite what we're saying about this power dynamic, that doesn't mean Celaena doesn't like Nehemia. That doesn't mean she doesn't appreciate Nehemia's companionship. Mm-hmm. This is a marker of just how far Celaena's come since she entered Rifthold, just like her view of the Glass Castle has changed. Celaena mocked women and reminisced how she could never trust women because of one previous betrayal. That's not the case here. She doesn't have those same feelings. And so a lot has changed, and that's not necessarily a bad thing here.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And then I also feel like in this moment, like between this, right? Her being like, oh my God, we can be friends, women supporting women. And then her walking away from Kane and this potential fight. She's growing, guys. Look at that.
She is. She's trying to control that angry fireball inside her.
Which is funny because fireball, do, do, do. Okay, I've been listening to a lot of Pitbull lately.
Okay. I was like, what?
I went to Disneyland and I listened to Pitbull on every single ride. It was pretty great. It was an interesting time. Anyway, I think that for a section of chapters where she is showing a lot of control, there's a lot of observation about this anger and fire inside of her, which is kind of contradictory and funny.
Yeah. And I'm sure intentional on SJM's part.
Agreed.
We then skip to the next scene. Celaena's training, and Kale and Dorian are watching from the shadows. Quote, Kale stood with Dorian in the shadows atop the mezzanine, staring down at the assassin as she punched at the dummy. He'd invited Dorian to come along to watch. Perhaps Dorian would now see why she was such a threat to him, to everyone. First off, this is just creepy.
Yeah.
They're in shadow. You know, their views are not necessarily in the light. I don't know that either of them can really see objective truth at the moment.
Mm-mm.
And this is getting to one of our themes. I just feel like this is what masters do. Like, this feels like owners watching their dog in dog training, you know, from afar.
But, that's accurate because they do own her freedom and they are watching her.
Yeah. And people view her as a lapdog.
You're not wrong. That's gross. I feel icky.
It's gross.
Yeah. Kale and Dorian, as they're watching Celaena work out her frustration, Kale observes, quote, just being an assassin, whatever the cause of the underlining rage, she could never entirely unleash herself. Now, remember what we were saying, that it's like, you know, here she is showing restraint, and what Kale sees is, God, she just has so much underlining rage and she can't, she wants to completely unleash herself. Or it's like, okay, yes, maybe, but I don't know. It just felt like it was viewed in kind of a negative-ish light where it's like, do you not want her to restrain it? Anyway, I feel like it's also a breadcrumb as to, this might be a breadcrumb section, but we have it here and Amy didn't move my notes. So we're just talking about it now. This is not who I imagine Aelin to be later on. Aelin is someone who has a lot of, I don't want to spoil anything, but this woman that we're seeing here who has just has so much to unleash in the world, in anger. I don't see that in future books, and I think that has to do with a lot of truths coming into light later. And that's a good structure of a book series where it's like, okay, well, what happens when these internal things come out to play?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And this is not a spoiler, but looking at Crescent City, I would not say that Bryce has grown, but Bryce of the beginning of Earth and Blood is not dramatically different from the Bryce of Flame and Shadow.
Yeah.
Whereas Celaena of Throne of Glass is completely different from Aelin of Kingdom of Ash. Same with Dorian, same with Kale.
I mean, that's what happens when you get 7 books.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I guess I would be upset if they hadn't grown.
I know, right?
Dorian, in this moment, asks if Kale thinks Celaena can win, and Kale says, quote, I think if she doesn't get too riled and keeps a cool head when they duel, she might. But she's wild and unpredictable. She needs to learn to control her feelings, especially that impossible anger. It's so contradictory that he's thinking, she can never completely unleash herself, but she needs to control her feelings.
Yeah.
Just, hey, Kale, make up your mind. B, it's also a breadcrumb. Anytime Celaena's anger is talked about, she can't keep a cool head because she's literally made of fire. Anyway. And there's going to be things where her anger is she's burning up on the inside or whatever the case is. It's always a hint towards the fire within her.
I love that.
I also want to say about Kale and Dorian in this moment, men often, if not always, put down feminine rage.
Yep.
As if it's poisonous, as if it's a rabid dog. And I feel like this comment from Kale in this moment is not really much different. And that's why he's brought Dorian here, is to show Dorian, look at this
a rabid dog. Cannot be tamed. Look at that.
Right.
Yeah. Be horrified.
Right. You should be horrified. You should stay away. It will give you rabies.
A woman has emotions that express anger, and she's handling it in a healthy way. Behold, fear, shield your eyes. Yeah. It makes me so mad. It makes me think of Taylor Swift's Mad Woman. You know, like there's nothing like a mad woman. And women don't get to be mad. And that is the most frustrating thing, because I will always remember there was one time I was working at my job, not where I'm at, past job. And it was very corporate. And I went to my boss just to complain about something. And I was just probably complaining like this and blah, 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 blah. I'm not yelling. I'm animated, you know, nothing intense. And he takes me to a separate room just to tell me to calm down. You need to calm down. And I was floored. I was like, you want to see me pissed off? I didn't say that. I was in my mid-20s. I did not have the vocabulary or the fully frontal developed brain lobe to like express myself. But it was horrifying, and you do not get to be mad or express any emotions. But you know what I say to that? Fuck it.
Fuck you.
Fuck you. Burn it all down.
That's right.
Now, as Kale and Dorian are watching Selena, both of them see that Knox comes over, and we realize, and Dorian and Kale explains to Dorian, like, yeah, this is someone that she trains with. And then Dorian asks, quote, "And you allow this?" Kale hid his glower at Dorian's tone. "If you want me to put an end to it, I will." Dorian watched them for another moment. "No, let her train with him. The other champions are brutes. She could use an ally." That she could. As much as I feel like we're meant to kind of swoon over this moment of like, wow, the two boys are jealous of Knox and they're just they want to look out for her safety. Let's go ahead and allow her to have a friend. Let's allow her to continue to train with this person. Let's allow her to have an ally. We deem this person an ally, therefore we allow it. How about the fact that Selena identified him as an ally? Like,
yep.
You know, and it's just a reminder that they are the ones in control of her life. I was editing, Amy and I were both editing episode 1 this week, and I was like, wow, we made some good points. And, you know, the fact that Dorian is in control of her food, her clothing, her home, her identity, everything. And now this is another example of him in control of her allies and her friends, even though he allows it. If he decided not to allow it, that would they would remove that obstacle that is Knox. So they're poopy men. In these chapters, we see Selena say that she likes Kale and that she likes Dorian, and we're going to get these in different moments. I think it's funny that it happens kind of very relatively close to each other. I'm going to argue that while it's made to seem that she likes Dorian in a romantic way, I'm going to keep arguing that it's not. Like, there's an attraction. There's an attraction, but not romance or emotional, if that makes sense. So, you know, it's hard not to be attracted to someone who's hot. We see Kale push Selena, though, in this episode several times. Quote, "He was merciless during their sessions. He had her doing all sorts of activities, walking on her hands, juggling blades. It wasn't anything new, but it was unpleasant. But his temper had improved somewhat. He did seem a bit sorry for hitting her leg so hard. Selena supposed she liked him." Now, you know, this one isn't as romantic as what we're going to get that discovery when Selena's like, oh my God, I like Dorian, after they have like a moment with each other. But this kind of training, juggling knives, walking on her hands, that seems like the level of ridiculous training that Arobin had her do.
Well, and he hit her leg. Like, yeah, she's complaining that her leg is sore because he whacked her.
Yes. Which, like, why did he whack her? Because he was jealous of Knox? Was he jealous that Dorian was jealous of Knox? You know what I mean? Like, you can't tell me that Kale did it out of the kindness of his heart of hitting her leg. So, yeah, it just was like, it felt very like Arobin structure. But again, like, then that goes into, I feel like Kale represents Arobin, and there's that weird daddy issues there. And Dorian is going to represent his father and that destruction and royalty and memories. And, you know, her coming not to terms or peace with it, but there's a confronting it. And what better way to confront it with kissing it, you know? That's how I confront my trauma.
Kissing your trauma?
I kiss my trauma. There's no trauma near. The problem is I've kissed too many traumas.
Excuse us while we hydrate, and you listen to this ad.
One of the things I promised that I'd do this year is to both treat myself and really take time in what I choose to add to my closet.
As you know, I'm preparing for a wedding and that's super expensive, but just because that's happening in my life doesn't mean that I want to lower the quality of the things that I buy for myself during the regular year.
Quince is my go-to for luxury essentials at affordable prices. Quince offers a range of high-quality items at prices within reach, like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50 and washable silk tops and dresses.
The best part about Quince is that all those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands, which is exactly what I'm looking for.
That's because Quince only works with factories that uses safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. By working directly with the factories, Quince is able to cut out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. One of my favorite things I got from Quince is my boyfriend cardigan, which I have not been able to take off.
Their washable silk blouses has really elevated my work wardrobe and makes cleanup super duper easy because I hate dry cleaning.
Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns.
That's QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/booktalk. As most of our listeners know, I'm getting married, and let me tell you, getting married is expensive.
Let me tell you, being a guest to your wedding is expensive, and that's where Acorns come in.
Acorns is a financial wellness app that makes it easy to start saving and investing for your future, and in my case, my wedding.
You don't need to be an expert. Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that matches you to your money goals.
You don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you get started with the spare money you've got right now, even if all you've got is spare change.
Money planning stresses me out quite a bit, and Acorns makes it so easy.
It only takes 5 minutes to create an account with Acorns and start investing. It gives you small, simple steps to get you and your money on track, which is sometimes just the hardest part.
I love it because no matter what age you are, it's always important to be able to take control of your money and your investments.
So sign up now and join the over 13 million all-time customers who've already saved and invested over $22 billion with Acorns. Head to acorns.com/booktalk, that's BOOKTALK, or download the Acorns app to get started. Paid client endorsement compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 1 compensation provided. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK.
We talk about a lot of different books on our podcast, Amy, but if there is one thing I just keep coming back to, it is romance.
Imagine not only reading romance, but getting swept away in every stolen glance and touch. That is what you're going to find on Galatea.
Galatea is a reading app where anyone craving a little me time can dive into a library of romance stories that leave you feeling recharged and fulfilled.
There are over 1,000 bestsellers to choose, from shifter romance to bad boy billionaires, forbidden love, werewolf alphas, slow burn fantasy, teen drama, and much, much more.
You know I love my werewolf alpha stories, and my billionaires, and my slow burns. Oh my god, all of it. Galatea is home to original series and standalone stories with an exclusive catalog of best-selling authors, with new chapters dropping daily, so there's always something new to explore.
Over 30 million people have fallen in love with reading on Galatea. Join now to indulge in stories that make you feel like yourself again.
Right now, Galatea is offering our listeners an extra 25% off on top of an already irresistible, affordable subscription when you go to galatea.com/booktalk.
That's GALATEA.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to indulge in unlimited stories for even less.
Head over to galatea.com/booktalk and go read about some werewolves.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Also in the previous chapters, like the episode before this, she actually calls Kale her friend. And this kind of feels like a few steps back in that sentiment. Like, you know, you already called him your friend. Now you're like, I like him. And I think it shows some of the resentment she still has towards Kale, whether that's resentment of him accusing her, not overtly, but like potentially accusing her of being part of the murders. And also the distance that I think that she's been putting there between the two men after getting her mission from Elena.
Yeah, I think in summary, Celaena's really confused.
Yeah.
She just doesn't know how to feel about Kale. And if we compare her feelings now to how she felt about Kale when she first met him in Endovier, shortly after Endovier, when they were first training, this is a very complex situation that she finds herself in. And is he her friend? Is he her mentor? Is he abusive? Is he like, she can't?
The answer is yes.
Yes. She can't really figure it out. So right now they're in the library together. And as Selena is kind of reading and talking to Kale, but also trying to research word marks, she has this moment of reflection where she realizes that Kale was old enough to probably recall all the destruction Dorian's father inflicted during his conquest of all the lands around them, including Terrasen.
Because Kale is 4 years older than her.
Yes, correct.
So that means he would have been 12 when all of it went down.
Correct. So Selena thinks, quote, "What had it been like to grow up in the shadow of the king who had ordered so much destruction, to have lived here when royal families were slaughtered, when seers and magic wielders were burned alive and the world fell into darkness and sorrow?" I think that this adds an additional layer of complexity to how Selena views Kale, because maybe for the first time she doesn't see him as part of the quote-unquote patriarchy. He's not part of the conquering nation so much, but she recognizes, oh, he was a child who also had to like witness all of this. And he might not have been personally affected, but that was a lot of destruction to have witnessed regardless.
It's
even
a
if
different
it's not
type of trauma.
Right, exactly. And I think for the, you know, maybe the first time she's not seeing Kale as part of the problem. And what we're actually seeing her have is empathy, or trying to see Kale's perspective of the world that he was brought up in. Again, really complicated compared to, you know, easily like, I resent you. You're captain of the guard to the man who killed my family. We have nothing in common.
I almost wonder if her dynamic and coming to terms and peace with that is almost more complicated than Dorian. You know, like, even though Dorian is the son of the king that destroyed her life, he's just so that's the only interactions he's had with her has been flirty and nice. Versus Kale, yes, he's not an actual he wasn't a participant in that. He wasn't there. He's the captain of the guard, so he is kind of like, you know, now he's actively participating, even though he's not one of those out there conquering for him. And he's also training her and beating her up and stuff. So there's like that. There's a lot of I think there's a lot more complication there than with Dorian, which might be why she's attracted to Dorian, because it's a little bit simpler.
I completely agree.
It's like, there we are. We're done with the episode. We figured it all out.
I mean, I have more points.
No, I know. We have more. Okay. So at this point though, Selena finds The Walking Dead, which is a book, and I love it.
Not a comic.
I know, right? So she found this great TV show called The Walking Dead, and she just binged it all week.
It was actually originally a comic. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. I didn't know.
Yeah, no, I did. I relate to the TV show.
Yeah, I understand.
You know, it's funny. One of those past traumas introduced me to the TV show. Yeah. Anyway, so I love that moment because it's kind of like, did she find that book or did the book find her? Quote, Selena pulled another book towards her and grinned. It was as if someone had read her mind. It was a large black volume entitled The Walking Dead in tarnished silver letters. We get this ongoing theme in all of SJM's works, and that is like calls to like. And I think I saw someone in one of our comments of one of our videos was like, they didn't like that like calls to like it was a theme that they were just like not into. I don't know. I'm not mad at it. I kind of like it. I think that it's it's great at the beginning because you're kind of like, well, why is this calling to you? If like calls to like.
I can just, as a tangent, I can understand why people might be tired of like calls to like, because it gets said so much in the ACOTAR series.
Yeah.
It gets like super annoying, tiresome. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I get it.
What we're seeing is like calls to like, but it's not spelled out that way. And I think that's what I appreciate about this moment.
Yeah, I think that especially when you could take in consideration, you have like the fairies that left her the crown, or the fact that Elena finds her, and the fact that Selena then gets this book. We're getting that like calls to like, we just don't know it yet.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I do have to point out, because it's a little bit of a breadcrumb, but also just something to note about SJM's work in general. Quote, she didn't remember selecting this from the shelves. It reeked almost like soil, and Selena's nose crinkled as she turned the pages. Now, this is a clue. Smell of decay, smell of soil, the reeking. It's a clue SJM uses over and over in her writing to signal something associated with true evil. And as first-time readers, we don't know that, but you read any SJM work, it's going to come up.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder how many, there's only so many smells she can go through in this world.
It's true.
Selena then gets all scared in the library. And I have to say, SJM does a really good job of getting us in the moment. I think in her work, she continuously does a great job of getting the heart racing. Quote, there was scraping noises somewhere beneath her feet, close, as if someone were running a fingernail along the ceiling below. Selena slammed the book shut and stepped away from the table. The hairs on her arms rose, and she almost stumbled into the nearest tables as she waited for something, a hand, a wing, a gaping, fanged mouth to appear and grab her. I just wanted to applaud her because it's such a visceral feeling, and it's done in such a short amount of time. And, so we're at this heightened moment. We're at this like, oh my God, this is terrifying. But then we find out it's actually Kale, and I have nothing particularly to analyze. I just think it's hilarious. Quote, do you feel that? She asked Kale, who slowly, maliciously grinned. He held out his dagger and dragged it on the marble floor, creating the exact sound and feeling. Kick his ass.
Yeah. So it's funny.
Yeah.
Does it feel out of character? It's a little bit malicious. A bunch of champions are being killed. Is it really the time to create noises that cause fear?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's just funny because he's like, when can we leave? Can we go yet? He was just questioning her of like, how much longer?
Right. So, so maybe on one hand, he's doing it to get her to leave, right?
Yeah.
It's something a big brother would do, like...
Yeah, my grandpa. It made me think of my grandpa immediately.
Yeah, you just don't appreciate... Or like an uncle, like you just don't appreciate it. And I want to really focus in on this right now because Selena is scared. Kane just scared her earlier that morning with Nehemia. He knows her identity. She hasn't told Kale this. She's really internalizing a lot of what's going on right now. Yeah. And the mystery, especially when she has the knowledge that there's an evil force in this, that Elena has warned her about. So any positive feelings that Selena felt towards Kale, because there were some, right? Yeah. She felt happy that he was here in the library with her instead of the usual guards. Pretty sure her heart skips a beat. And then Kale does this. And it completely negates that positive feeling she was having towards him, despite the complexity of her feelings towards him.
Yeah.
Oh, here's the quote of what she was feeling. Quote, usually guards watched her in the library for hours on end, day after day. What was Kale doing here? She smiled, her heart skipping a beat. So she feels special.
Yeah.
And then Kale ruins that. And I don't say it to be mean to Kale, but what's happening is that his antics are pushing Selena away. She has very complex feelings about Kale already. Yeah. She's feeling vulnerable. She's feeling scared. Mm-hmm. That's only going to add to Selena's confusion, which is why she's going to focus on Dorian.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Good freaking point. It's funny. You were comparing all of the things that like what Kale does. You're like, it's like an older brother, like an uncle. And dare I say, like a father figure?
Mm-hmm.
It feels like such a dad joke.
Yeah, it feels like a dad thing to do, yeah. But the kind of dad thing that you're just like, I hate you. You don't understand me.
It's not nice. Like, I'm going through emotions that I am not verbalizing to you right now.
Yeah.
Now we're in chapter 28. And Celaena is frustrated because she is not finding any information on word marks. So she takes out her frustration. Quote, cursing, Celaena tried again. She hit the cue ball in such a way that it gave a pathetic half roll to the side, gently knocking into a colored ball with a faint click. Well, at least she hit something. It was more successful than her search on the word marks had been. Now, this is a great, show not tell that she's in a funk, right? Like, so it's rather than being like, Celaena came home and was very frustrated. It was like, here she is trying to hit the cue and like the ball and it's just not working. But I have a question for you, Amy. Why does Celaena go do an activity that she does not know how to do, that is only frustrating her, and is kind of just like, riling her up after such a disappointing research time? And then especially when you take this quote into consideration, she'd be incredible by midnight. She'd master this ridiculous game, or she'd turn the table into firewood and use it to burn Cain alive.
I love that she would turn it into firewood.
I know.
So, to your point, Celaena doesn't like being bad at things, even if it's something she's never done before. That's just her pride, right? Yeah. However, in the same vein, her pride dictates her actions when she's weakest. She's most prideful when she is most weak. I feel like that's what we've seen her pattern become. Yeah. And so if she's frustrated about research, and she does go through the list of she wasn't in the mood to play the piano, she wasn't in the mood to do all these things, right? Frustration with the fact she's reading and can't figure anything out about word marks has created, I think, this sense in Celaena that like, well, I can do anything. Just because research isn't cooperating with me right now doesn't mean that I'm useless. I can do anything. So I'm going to go play billiards.
Yeah.
Or second option, SJM just really needed Celaena to play billiards.
You know what's funny? Back into our editing of, I can't remember, chapter 1 or episode 1 or 2, there's a moment when we're talking about Celaena goes through her apartments and we're like, these are some nice ass apartments. And there is when we talk about like the billiards table, and we are like, why didn't they remove the cue table, the pool cues? And you and I are both like, here's a reason, like a literary analysis reason. Or she just really needed to get to this point in this book.
Yeah,
and I think that we're like, she had a vision and she's going to make that vision happen.
I am going to take a guess that is uneducated, no reasons for it, but I'm going to guess SGM, before she wrote the beginning of the book, had a scene of Dorian and Celaena at the billiards table.
100% agree.
Yeah, and that dictated why that billiards table was in there.
Because to your point, she's a prideful character, so why wouldn't she go and do something that she's good at? But we're going to do the analysis like we have to, but I like to kind of call it almost like a blooper reel of like just our own guess.
Yeah.
I think it's really funny. You called it. Dorian then and Celaena have this back and forth here, and they're not exactly arguing. Their dynamic confuses me sometimes because they're not arguing, but they're also not. And he teases her about her frustration, and she tells him, quote, "Don't you dare mock me." Now, here she is with a lot of emotions, right? Like, we know that the word marks are playing heavy on her mind. She knows that the Elena warning is playing heavy on her mind, and the fact that there's champions being murdered. She's not in a good mental headspace. So then you have the son of the man who destroyed your home coming in and kind of harassing you. And especially, she just saw the book, The Walking Dead, that's from Terrason. Like, I think we're going to get moments in this conversation where those old traumas, she'll even say the doors are opening up and she's having trouble shutting it.
Yeah. So I'm going to make a queen. I think it's a Queen of Shadows reference. So this is a little bit of a spoiler, but
it's in the first 3 books, right? Or
no, it's not. It's It's after Assassin's Blade, but it's not really a spoiler. I'm just referring to a character from it.
We are you've been warned.
You've been warned. I'm going to refer to a character from Queen of Shadows. I think it's Queen of Shadows. Adian, her cousin, is the brother-like figure from her past.
Yep.
Who currently works in Dorian's father's army.
Yeah.
And it's the relationship that Celaena and Dorian have in this exchange that they have feels very brother-sister.
It does.
So it reminds me a lot of, and also remember, the assumption from Aylin's childhood is that she would marry Aedion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this feels like a replica of that dynamic.
Which is such a good freaking point, because she gets into the discussion of you don't marry for love, you marry for expectations. So I love that, because it's not romantic love. Yes, Dorian is hot, but you cannot convince me that there's actual emotions happening. But the fact that he is kind of an Aedion replica in many ways makes sense why she would have that mentality while they start talking about marriage. Everyone, good job, Amy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm also going to, all that agreed, but I'm also going to bring it back to Chaol now. Celaena is frustrated. She's very frustrated with Chaol. She just abandoned him because he was mocking her fear by his little antics of, making spooky noises with his knife on the floor.
Yeah.
Again, not something you should do when there's a murderer on the loose. From Dorian's perspective, when he surprises her in her apartment, she, quote, yelped and swung toward him. She wore a tunic and pants and her hair was unbound. He leaned against the table, smiling as she turned a deep shade of red. So let's look at her appearance. She wore a tunic and pants and her hair was unbound. That is a very vulnerable looking Celaena when you compare it to the Celaena who is done up and looks like a lady of court when she's playing her role. So take that. She's in a vulnerable moment. She's partially because of Chaol and Chaol not recognizing her vulnerability. And this is not the first time Dorian has found her vulnerable. He found her vulnerable in Endovier. He found her vulnerable when she was playing the piano. Yep. He found her vulnerable when she was sleeping.
And he's an emotional boy. Like, we already know that he's, like, so far up his own ass about how he just, like, is so intellectual and emotional that it's like, of course he's going to find her in these moments.
Right. And now, exactly. She's at this low. And so what does he do? He just shows how he's really good at playing pool and she's really bad at it, just to emphasize that vulnerability, that, like, I'm better than you.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit like a power move. It feels a little bit like taking advantage of her vulnerability, which is going, I think, to play in again to the rest of their conversation, both in this scene and another scene in the future. I also want to point out the fact that he's actively, like, talking to her and demonstrating how good he is at pool. And I felt like that was a metaphor for how he's enjoyed this really cushy life, this royal upbringing that lacks responsibilities, that he can learn to play pool and be good at it. Celaena, on the other hand, isn't skillful because that life of leisure was taken away from her. And it's really rubbing salt in the wound right now.
Yeah. It's, I want to go back to something we talked about in a previous episode, that Dorian was negging her and was, like, trying to flirt with her by putting her down. Now it feels like he's just trying to go through every trick in the book, right, to get there. Like, he literally says at one point, this is the oldest trick in the book, like, where he kind of comes behind her and he's like, this is how you do this, you shoot pool. He is trying so desperately to find a way in. At the same time, he's not willing to try too hard. So we'll keep going. Back into, like I was saying, his old cheesy, I didn't even realize this was my next moment. I was just thinking. He says, quote, though it was the oldest and most shameless trick in the book, he reached over her and put his hand on top of the one that gripped the cube. Then he positioned the fingers of her other hand on the wood before lightly gripping her wrist. To Dorian's dismay, his face became worn. His eyes shifted to hers, and to his relief, he found that she was as red as he, if not more so. Dorian is not here to play. He is here to hit on her. He was like, I will make you blush. I will make you want me. And at the same time, though, he's kind of falling for his own damn tricks, which is hilarious. I have another question for you, Amy, though. Dorian went to Celaena's room for the first time earlier in this book because he was jealous of Chaol. The next time he came there was because his mom wanted him to marry get married, and he was like, no, rebel for life. I'm going to go while drunk and into the sleeping girl's room.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's jealous of Knox. So, as much as he wants to get in there with Celaena, how much of this is really about her?
I really don't think it is. I think for both Celaena and Dorian, it's convenience.
Yeah.
And I say that because of the point I was making earlier. Celaena's heart was skipping a beat for Chaol in the previous chapter, and then he kind of mocked her for her fear unknowingly. Dorian is very conveniently taking advantage of that vulnerability when Chaol antagonized it. It's right place, right time for Dorian.
Yeah.
And here's a pretty lady who is embarrassed in a good way at his old, tired tricks of flirting.
Yep.
And so he's like, oh, she likes it. This is cool. And she is like, well, I have these really complex feelings for Chaol I don't understand. And like you said, Jack, it's so much simpler to just like this hot man who's trying to flirt with me anyway.
Yeah.
And so she misdirects her feelings for Chaol, the positive feelings for Chaol, and shifts them onto Dorian because it's easier to explain her feelings for Dorian.
And Dorian doesn't have any true feelings for her.
No.
Like, he's never even, I'm about to make some more points. Just you wait. This is where I feel like you see where they're more friendly, or as you were kind of saying, more familial. Quote, he won every game, yet she hardly noticed. As long as she hit the ball, it resulted in shameless bragging. When she missed, well, even the fires of hell couldn't compare to the rage that burst from her mouth. And that's because like her pride and ego are back. Like she's feeling more herself, and she's feeling very Celaena. You know what I mean? Like it feels like when a friend comes over to cheer you up, and you kind of feel more like yourself, and it's not a tense, emotional, romantic moment. And I think that we're seeing this, that Dorian does not push Celaena the way that Chaol pushes Celaena.
I think that is a great point. I think what you just said really hit home for me, that Dorian helps Celaena feel more like herself. Which self is questionable.
We don't really know. Does she know?
I don't think she knows. But he doesn't shame her for her pride when she shouldn't have pride. Like, you hit the ball, great. You're still not good. But Dorian's just tickled. He's just amused.
Yeah.
And so he's just like, okay, that's fun. Cool. Good for you. And I think Celaena being allowed to be that way makes her feel better, which is why it's easy to like Dorian compared to Chaol, because Chaol does not allow those things of her. And also the breadcrumb. The fires of hell couldn't compare to the rage inside her. Like,
come on, guys. Come on. She knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
However, through all of this, right, he's coming in. He's like, I'm going to come and hit on her. However, he is still Dorian at his core currently. And that means he's still pretty selfish, and that he identifies love and caring about others to himself. Quote, how she became an assassin, how she learned to play the pianoforte. It was all a mystery. Now, please notice what he's saying isn't like, I just keep asking her and she just won't tell me. And I keep, I want to know more, but she dodges my questions. He's not asking any questions. Now, he will come back and he will ask her questions about herself. I believe it's like several weeks have passed at that point before he actually does this. So in this moment, he is still just very consumed about himself and, like, I want to know all these things, but not willing to try. And Dorian is just not willing to go beyond his own thought process and actually ask.
He's not, because asking would imply he does not possess her. He just wants her to provide the information like a good dog. Quote, he wanted to know everything about her. He wished she'd just tell him. He hasn't asked her shit. He just wants her to tell him. If knowledge is power and Celaena is leaving Dorian powerless by not giving this information, she's no better than his mother or father. Other people he's not capable of speaking up to or asking things of. His desire to know her then is a desire to possess her. And A, that's why they won't work. B, he's also losing compared to Chaol.
Yeah.
And to ask for it is essentially to beg for it. And that that wouldn't be okay.
Yeah, Dorian's never had to ask for anything.
That's exactly right.
So we've talked about power and titles, right? She is Aderlin's greatest assassin. Dorian is a prince. And when there's a power and titles, that usually means there's intimacy in names. Quote, "Good night, Celaena," he said. It was the first time he addressed her by her name. It came off his tongue nicely. Like I said, power of a title, but then the power of names. Intimacy is a different type of power. And with that in mind, there's more power to intimacy than there is to power, if that makes sense. Just like there's going to be more power to the name Aelin than there is to Celaena. And there's more power to Celaena than there is to Aderlin's assassin. So, it's like any time who reads Hermione fan fiction, there's always a moment where Hermione stops calling Draco Malfoy and calls him Draco. And every single time he goes, "Say that again."
I think this is a great point. I also feel like it just emphasizes this need of possession on Dorian's part.
Yeah,
he says her name because he wants to possess her.
Mm-hmm.
And if she's not giving him information, he's going to use her name.
Yep. And Dorian is still trying to understand Celaena. I feel like he's kind of understanding that there's a male gaze happening, but not consciously. He's not a smart boy. But there's almost like a moment where he was like, "Is she a person? What?"
Mm-hmm.
Quote, "If she became his father's champion and later gained her freedom, would she remain the same? Or was this all a facade to get what she wanted? But he couldn't imagine that she was pretending, didn't want to imagine that she was pretending." And it's kind of like, his brain cells have worked so hard to get to this point. And he was like, "I don't want to have these thoughts."
No, it's not real.
And even though, our sweet dumb boy, Dorian, is trying to kind of be like, "Wait a minute. Is she a person with her own motivations?" I think that actually is still better than what Cale's doing, who he's kind of trying to protect Celaena to be in this bubble that he's put her in.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree for maybe a different viewpoint, but even though in this moment Dorian is doubting Celaena,
Mm-hmm.
right? And his view of Celaena, he hopes for the best.
Yeah.
Where Cale always expects the worst.
Yeah.
He always expects Celaena to turn on them, to have more rage than they can handle, at least Dorian's she probably has ulterior motivations, but I hope she still likes me.
Yeah, I know.
Whereas
Cale's she's going to have ulterior motives and I'm going to figure it out, but also her hair smells really nice.
But also she's going to slit Dorian's throat. I got to be careful.
But she's also the sweet virgin who's never been attracted to any other man, but maybe she was, but not the way with Dorian. Yeah. Cale has such complicated emotions when it comes to Celaena. And that's what makes book 3 so good.
Book 3 or book 2?
Shit. Which is the one where
Nehemia dies.
Yeah.
Book 2.
And that's the one where they break up?
Yeah. Crown of Midnight.
Oh, book 2. Okay. Thank you.
Because then she has to go to Heir of Fire. She's in the Feyland with Rowan.
Right. That's the 3rd book?
Yeah.
Huh. Can I be honest with you? I forgot Nehemia dies.
Oh no!
No, it makes sense. It sounds familiar.
I just spoiled it for you.
No, we're talking about, spoiler warning in the context of the first 3 books. I really should go power listen to them.
Maybe.
Yeah. Also, my nail broke. So if anyone's like, "What, her stubby ass finger?" I'm going to keep all that in. Okay. So to my note, wow, that's exciting. I can't wait to read this book. So to the point though, is I remember Cale turns on her and he in the second book, and it just kind of it'll make the second book so much more exciting because she's got a lot of complicated feelings. He's got a lot of complicated feelings with her.
Yeah, and that's why Celaena breaks up with his ass.
As she should. Wow, this series sounds good.
Except SJM did also kill her only POC character in the second book.
Yeah, no, that is a fucked. It's so funny how much I've blocked out of this series. I was like, Rowan is in the 3rd book?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, do we find out that she's Aelin Galathinius in the second book? Wow.
Well, We find out she's Fae at the end of the second book.
But not that she's Aelin. Because I thought we find out she's Aelin Galathinius. Ash River was the third book.
Yeah, I think that's in the third book. But we find out she's Fae, I'm pretty sure, at the end of the second book.
It's going to be exciting.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy. Stick around for part 2, which airs on Thursday.
We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. We would also love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a future mini episode or a Patreon exclusive episode.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. You can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at the handle booktalkforbooktalk. Bye!
I hit record so that people can see us putting our lipstick on, so they can see what we do for them.
How much effort we put into every recording.
Remember the days when we didn't put on makeup to record?
Ugh, and we wore pajamas. We didn't shower. Our hair was dirty.
Pretty sure teeth stank. It was great.
Fix my bangs, otherwise I'm going to be like hyper focused on them. No, I don't know if you noticed while editing the video episodes, but sometimes we look really bored.
I know. I'm trying so hard. I'm making my eyes more big.
And just like, I'm
noticing it. We have resting bored face.
We really do.
Look, it's like we're here for a long time. I can't be the entire time, but we have to.
I did edit the episodes, so sometimes we just focus on the person talking, so we don't see the other person's bored face.
I love that. It's like I'm riveted. That's my paying attention face.
I know.
One of the things I promised that I do this year is to both treat myself and really take time in what I choose to add to my closet.
As you know, I'm preparing for a wedding and that's super expensive, but just because that's happening in my life doesn't mean that I want to lower the quality of the things that I buy for myself during the regular year.
Quince is my go-to for luxury essentials at affordable prices. Quince offers a range of high-quality items at prices within reach, like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50 and washable silk tops and dresses.
The best part about Quince is that all those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands, which is exactly what I'm looking for.
That's because Quince only works with factories that uses safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. By working directly with the factories, Quince is able to cut out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. One of my favorite things I got from Quince is my boyfriend cardigan, which I have not been able to take off.
Their washable silk blouses has really elevated my work wardrobe and makes cleanup super duper easy because I hate dry cleaning.
Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns.
That's QUINCE.com/booktalk. BOOKTALK to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/booktalk.
We talk about a lot of different books on our podcast, Amy, but if there is one thing I just keep coming back to, it is romance.
Imagine not only reading romance, but getting swept away in every stolen glance and touch. That is what you're going to find on Galatea.
Galatea is a reading app where anyone craving a little me time can dive into a library of romance stories that leave you feeling recharged and fulfilled.
There are over 1,000 bestsellers to choose, from shifter romance to bad boy billionaires, forbidden love, werewolf alphas, slow burn fantasy, teen drama, and much, much more.
You know I love my werewolf alpha stories, and my billionaires, and my slow burns. Oh my god, all of it. Galatea is home to original series and standalone stories with an exclusive catalog of best-selling authors, with new chapters dropping daily, so there's always something new to explore.
Over 30 million people have fallen in love with reading on Galatea. Join now to indulge in stories that make you feel like yourself again.
Right now, Galatea is offering our listeners an extra 25% off on top of an already irresistible, affordable subscription when you go to galatea.com/booktalk.
That's GALATEA.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to indulge in unlimited stories for even less.
Head over to galatea.com/booktalk. and go read about some werewolves.